Let me welcome you to this session called European Union Migration Policy from 2025, View from Warsaw. This armchair conversation ambition is to discuss within 30 minutes current migration priorities, the future of Ukrainian refugees under temporary protection, and plans for the Polish Council Presidency. Rapidly growing labor migration, tensions at the Polish-Belarusian border, and an influx of 1 million refugees from Ukraine have transformed Poland into an immigration country almost overnight. With this, allow me to welcome Undersecretary of State of the Ministry of the Interior and Administration of the Republic of Poland, Professor Maciej Duszczyk. Welcome, who has a rich academic career, works as a researcher at the Center for Migration Studies at the Faculty of Political Science and International Studies of the University of Warsaw, who is a former chairman of the Council of the University of Gdańsk, who in 2016 to 2020 has served as the Vice Rector for Academic Affairs and International Cooperation of the University of Warsaw, and is a recipient of numerous scholarships and grants. In 2008 to 2011, Mr. Duszczyk was a member of the team of strategic advisors to Prime Minister Donald Tusk, and in 2012 to 2014 he managed the work of the Task Force for Development of Polish Migration Policy at the Chancellery of the President of the Republic of Poland. My name is Radim. I'm head of region Eastern Europe and Central Asia at ICMPD, head of Prague Process Secretariat, where Poland is among the leading states traditionally. The title of our conversation refers to European Union policy from 2025, but let us start with the perspective from Poland, from the capital. We know that a week ago, on the 15th of October, the new strategy, the new migration strategy was announced with the slogan, "Regain control, ensure security." Prime Minister Tusk stated that Poland must have 100% control over who enters and who stays in the country. I would like to welcome you and invite you to elaborate on the main building blocks of this strategy, and knowing that some of the proposed measures have sparked significant media attention, to also focus on this particular point of suspension or possible suspension of international protection under certain conditions.
Thank you very much. First of all, thank you very much for this very kind invitation to close the day. I know quite well that we are the last obstacles before reception. That's why I think we have to be absolutely concrete and answer the questions as concrete as possible, of course. And yes, it was a decision. This was also the personal decision of Prime Minister to publish also the strategy, this draft of the strategy after the meeting of the Council of Ministers last week. It is the 8 chapters, 8 building blocks. Of course, the media mainly concentrated on the 3 sentences from the strategy about the possible suspension of the access to the asylum procedure in Poland, temporarily and territorially. But it's the very complex strategy. As I said, it is the 8 chapters, 8 building blocks, from labor market, education, also with relations with diaspora, also how we would like to react on the hybrid war against us, and also how we would like to respond to the artificially created migration route which has been created by Russia and Belarus. You have to imagine that in the history of migration, as you said, I came from academia, in the history of migration, Poland is the country which changed its position from typical emigration into immigration one in the fastest in the history of migration. And 10 years ago, we had only 100,000 of foreigners in Poland, and now we have 2.5 million of foreigners. Of course, 2 million of them are Ukrainians. 1 million of them are war refugees, but just before outbreak of the full-scale war against Ukraine, we had in Poland 1.3 million of Ukrainians are the typical labor migrants. That's why for us it was a little bit easier to manage this huge influx of war refugees because we had already Ukrainians in Poland. That's why such countries like the Czech Republic, also the Germany, for these 3 countries, maybe also the Lithuania, I see my friend Arnoldas here. And it was a little bit easier for us to manage this influx because if we try to account, for example, understanding what was the challenge to provide the housing for 1 million of people in a relatively short period of time, it was, of course, very difficult, but due to presence of Ukrainians, it was possible to manage such huge challenge. And of course, previous government decided not to prepare and publish the migration strategy. It was one of the arguments why I decided to be a part of this government, because the Prime Minister, also the Speaker of the Parliament, Szymon Hołownia, told me that I am the guy who should prepare and consult this strategy with different stakeholders. Unfortunately, and it is the challenge, of course, we have to also address this challenge in the next weeks and months. Council of Ministers decided to accept this strategy before it was absolutely necessary, before the European Council last week. Because our Prime Minister decided to go to the European Council with quite strong statement about the different issues to try to highlight the problem that we have to think a little bit different about the migration policy of the European Union. We have, of course, it was the first panel about the Pact of Migration Asylum, which is the law, of course, at the European level. But this pact, to be honest, doesn't address our challenges, especially the situation of the Polish-Belarusian border, but also the protection of our borders, not only with Belarus, but also with Russia. That's why it was absolutely necessary to discuss this strategy before European Council on last Thursday. That's why this strategy has been not already consulted with a lot of different stakeholders, but it's absolutely necessary. Of course, I think so we did what was possible in that time. Namely, I asked my friends and colleagues from the Migration Research Committee from the Polish Academy of Science to send more than 8,000 of different questionnaires, and we got 2,000 responses, 2,000 filled questionnaires, and also this committee published the report, and I took from this report 50–60% of recommendations, but of course the strategy is not the research paper, it is the public policy statement accepted by the government. That's why, of course, it was not possible to take all of this recommendation to the report, because, of course, expert scholars, members of the think tanks had their own perceptions of the migration, but we have to also take into account different political aspects of migration policy and include such perspective from the government perspective into the official paper. That's why it is not so easy to implement all of this recommendation from the scholars. I know as a scholar how it is difficult, but we did our best to do it. And of course the most discussed issue, temporary and territorial suspension of the access to Polish territory, also for people who want to ask for the international protection, who apply for international protection. It is typical exceptional regulation. This is crisis regulation. Unfortunately, Belarus and Russia, during the last weeks and months, have decided to change the modus operandi. And now we have more and more, we don't know, migrants or maybe the members of the different special services, Belarusian and Russian services, who attacked Polish soldiers and Polish border guards. Unfortunately, one Polish soldier was killed by we don't know who. We are quite sure that it was the Moroccan trained by the services, by the special services in Belarus. And we asked for, of course, to Belarus to cooperate with us to find such person who killed Polish soldier, but it was impossible. But also the 4 Polish border guards were seriously injured with the stones, with the different types of weapons, and more than 100 people were injured. That's why this is the change of the modus operandi. We know quite well that during the next weeks, the number of attempts of illegal border crossing will decrease, because this is due to weather. Weather, at now we have in the forest 0 or maybe minus 2 degrees, and it is more and more risky for migrants to spend maybe one night in the forest. That's why we expect that the number of attempts of illegal border crossing will decrease. But of course, we do our best also to save the lives. It was very risky for me. I know from the political reason it was very risky for me because in February I decided to include into this migration policy one of the approach, 0 deaths at the borders. And it has succeeded because last year, 2023, we had in Poland 18 deaths of migrants, but now in this year we have only 2. 1 migrant in March 2024, and 1 soldier. And it means that our approach, 0 deaths at the border, works, really worked. But of course we expect that in March the next season will start. It would be just before presidential election in Poland, and we don't know what would happen also in the battlefield Ukraine. That's why we should be prepared for not only positive scenario but also for the worst scenario. That's why, after very deeply discussion with lawyers, how we can react, on the one hand to protect our border, but on the other hand to protect the human rights, we decided to propose territorially and temporarily suspending access to the Polish territory. Also for people who want to apply for international protection. But of course, when this scenario might happen. For example, we monitor, because it is not so difficult, we monitor also the movement of airplanes. And for example, if we observe, if we see more and more, for example, the planes from Syria, from Senegal, from Turkey as well, moved to the territory of Belarus or Russia, it would be a clear signal for us that something will happen. And if we see also the relocation migrants from different parts of Belarus or Russia into the Polish border, it means that something will happen. In this scenario, if it would be the real crisis and real exceptional scenario, we would like to provide this territorially and temporary suspension of applying of refugee status in Poland. But, of course, it would be the vulnerable persons. And, for example, the women with children. Of course, even if we suspend this access to Polish territory, it will be possible to apply for refugee status or apply to asylum. This is exceptions, 4 exceptions. Exceptions, 2 exceptions. That's why it is our proposal, or also you know very well that this proposal was discussed very strongly during the last European Council. And I think so the Polish Prime Minister convinced the Prime Minister and Head of States, but also the European Commission, that this tool might be used as the crisis management tool. And of course, we are going to prepare this legal part, the legal binding for us regulation. But of course, we would like to consult our proposal with European Commission, Member States, but also with two most important organizations, UNHCR and International Organization for Migration. I talked last week also with the Deputy Director of UNHCR, but also with Ann Pope, the Director of IOM. And I promise that this both organizations will be this organization when we are going to consult our ideas, but also we would like to have very strong political discussion in Polish Parliament, but also with the Polish NGOs to better understand our ideas and also to listen to Polish activists, Polish NGOs, what would be possible or not in this regulation. Okay, maybe I stop now because I know I spoke already 10 minutes, but you know, for professor at the university, this 1 hour 30 minutes is the typical time to talk. Sorry for my
Mr. Minister,
too long.
We will move now to the next question, which relates to the title of this debate, which is European Union migration policy from 2025. And you've mentioned now the strategic objectives of Poland. You've mentioned instrumentalization, even weaponization of migration. You've mentioned Polish border, which also is the European Union external border. And we have touched upon the EU Pact on Migration. And we know that the EU presidency of Poland is coming as of January 2025. So how would this strategic direction of Poland resonate during your presidency? What would be the presidency priorities? And how would you like to impact the EU migration policy?
Yes, thank you very much for this very important question. I visited, I think so, 15, my colleagues can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so 15 capitals, but also I talked, for example, of our Greek colleagues about their priority during our meeting 2 weeks ago, I think so. And because I think so, I would like to also repeat, I think so, what Gerhard said during the first panel on Nicole, we should listen more than talk. That's why, of course, we have the priorities, new directive for return policy, visa suspension mechanism, EU talent pool, protection of the border, instrumentalization, externalization, and so on, so on. Of course, it is the plenty of issues. This is we have to work with the new Commission just after the election in the United States, with the European Parliament, after the Hungarian presidency. It would be very challenging. But we do our best to facilitate all of the processes, even if we are skeptical on the pact, because as I said, pact doesn't address our problems, especially border procedures on the Dublin procedure and so on. We don't have enough time to clarify why we are so strongly opposed to the pact. But of course, we will be presidency. That's why we will facilitate the implementation of the pact, because this is role of our presidency. This is our role to be chair of the 27 member states, also with the contact with the Secretary of the Council, European Commission, EU LISA, all of this Frontex, all of this organization, because it would be our role. That's why even if we are skeptical, we have facilitate the implementation of the pact and also to listen to different member states how to do it properly, to be honest, also the European Commission. And after this so many meetings, I think so we have to focus on three main maybe four most important issues. First of all, how to push to the European Commission to publish as soon as possible the new draft of the return directives. It would be absolutely necessary. It was also the conclusion from the last European Council. And I know that the European Commission accelerates its work on how to find this balance between the impact assessment, how to include also the different discussion about the effective return policy, and how to prepare the legal binding draft of the regulation. And another issue is the visa suspension mechanism regulation. It is very close to achieve, but we have to also have very strong discussion how to do it properly, because it would be a very strong instrument for us. Also with talking with the third countries. Facilitation of the visa access to the European Union is very important. It is also to building the legal pathways of migration. It was also mentioned during our whole day. We are speaking now a lot about the irregular migration, but we have to speak about legal migration. As we saw, Nicolas mentioned during the first panel about it's absolutely necessary to build because we have also the competitions. We have the competition, the labor market. We have the aging of the societies, and we need the migrants, of course. But this is the question how to do it a little bit more wisely than in the past. And that's why the visa suspension mechanism. This is our second priority. The third, very important, is we would like to come back also to regulation about the blacklisting of air carriers, because we know it quite well that so many different air companies cooperate with different smugglers and traffickers. That's why we have to also to try to put also this regulation on the table during our presidency, because it's also expectation in so many countries. Because as I said, we listen to different countries, and these three issues is absolutely necessary. And we would like to also to accelerate discussion on these three topics. But for us, as the country with so long border with Ukraine, it's absolutely necessary to talk about to start discussion about the temporality of temporary protection directive. Because we know quite well that after 3 years of this functioning of this temporary protection directive, it's absolutely necessary to start the discussion. We have our national regulation. I think so from the first, maybe January or from the 1st February. It depends on the Polish Parliament and the signing of this new act by the presidents. We would like to start the process of changing the status of Ukrainians in Poland from temporary protection into temporary stay for the next 3 years. We would like to stabilize their presence in Poland, but also allow them to keep the contacts with Ukraine. It's absolutely necessary, because I know this, one well-integrated Ukrainians in Poland, it is the one less Ukrainians with this possibility, with this capacity to come back to Ukraine. That's why it is absolutely necessary for us to find the balance. Of course, we have the shortages on the labor market, but it is from the one side. This is from the one side. This economic point of view, we need these Ukrainians in Polish labor markets. But on the other hand, it is the problem of surviving of Ukraine as the democratic pro-European country. That's why we have to find the balance. That's why after the winter, we have to wait now, these weeks or months. After the winter, we will publish the non-paper with 4 or 5, maybe 5 questions. And we will ask the member states what would be the position of different member states about if we are able to extend again the temporary protection directive, or we should define another solution. And we would like to have the report and also to send this report to our friends from Denmark, because Denmark will take over presidency from us. But we have the absolutely fantastic trio with Cyprus as well. That's why we work together, and we will start this discussion. But I think so decision will be taken during the Danish presidency. But it must be start by us. Yes.
Well, I see you have already answered the question that I didn't ask about Ukraine, so I would just...
but this is one of the priorities for our presidency, that's why...
Definitely it is. Just to mention to this, I mean, today is day 970 of the Russian invasion to Ukraine. It is 60% of Ukrainians were received by Germany, Poland, and the Czech Republic. And we advocate, I think, many stakeholders, including ICMPD, for a synchronized approach that you just described that would prevent fragmentation and secondary movements of Ukrainian refugees, or as some prefer to call them, the Ukrainians in particular, externally temporarily displaced Ukrainian citizens.
Yes, of course, because I can give you one example, because our friends from Czech Republic decided also to cut the different social instrument addressed to the Ukrainian refugees. I'm not against, of course, because we did it the same, but not so, maybe not so strong, not so far. And we have the secondary movement. But now, for example, people who need the access to the housing move from Czech Republic to Poland, because we still provide access for housing for different vulnerable persons, and because in our case it is absolutely necessary, and this way we have to avoid it, absolutely, yes. And it is also in the interest of our Ukrainian friends, because if people move from Poland to other countries, it would be more and more difficult for them to come back to Ukraine. We know it quite well from different migration theories that if they are close to the border, it's much more easier to keep the contacts, but also to move back to the Ukraine. And that's why, for example, we decided also to, as the last country, we decided also to provide mandatory access for Ukrainian children to the Polish schools, but also in the same time we provide the special assistance, cultural assistance in the schools to facilitate the process of integration between Ukrainian children and Polish children, to avoid any tensions between them. That's why it was also absolutely necessary, but I fully agree. And we will do our best during our presidency to find the European solutions. And maybe the last sentence from me, migration, it is really European challenge. If we have European challenge, we have to find the European solutions. And as the pro-democratic, pro-European government, we do our best to find the European solutions during our presidency, which address so many challenges we face in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think so, because
we had this ambitious objective to discuss complex issues in 30 minutes, which we managed. There is no time for questions left, but I believe there will be opportunity at the next point on the agenda. With this, I thank you, Mr. Minister. It was a pleasure to have a conversation.
Thank you very much for the invitation. Thank you.